In the welterweight division at UFC 296, your very first fight of the night. And you got Randy Brown coming in at 17-5, taking on Muslim Salikov, who comes in at 19-4. And these guys' records make it hard to believe this is the first fight of the night. Randy Rude Boy Brown, 4 inches taller at 6'3", he's 33. Salikov 39. That's hard to believe. Randy Brown, 8-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Brown is more active, 4.4 significant strikes per minute to 3.4 for Salikov. So that's like 15 over the course of the fight. But Salikov can land like a takedown every other round. Randy Brown, though, 74% takedown defense. That'll be helpful. Beat Wellington Turman in his last fight. Lost to Jack De La Maddalena before that by submission. Pretty surprising. Beat Francisco Trinaldo, Chaos Williams, Jared Gooden. So the guy is a winner. Salikov, on the other hand, 73% takedown defense. That won't matter here. Lost to Nicholas Dalby by decision. Beat Andre Fialho by KO and lost to Li Jingliang by KO. So he's losing to winners. And this is going to be the ultimate matchup. But to me, Randy Brown is the better fighter. He's probably not going to win by finish. He's going to grind out a victory, winning 2 out of 3 rounds, in my opinion. Mainly in terms of activity, he'll outstrike Salikov in those 2 rounds to win, in my opinion, to get to 18-5, welterweight division, UFC 296. In the heavyweight division at UFC 296, you got Martin Buday, who comes in at 13-1. Look out. Taking on Shamil Gaziev, who comes in at 11-0. This is just the second fight of the night. It's going to be a great card. Both guys stand 6'4". Buday 32, Gaziev 33. Gaziev 2-inch reach advantage, 79-77. Both guys stand right-handed. Now, Buday is 13-1 because he's very active. 5.6 significant strikes per minute to 1.5 for Gaziev. And you would think Gaziev has a good takedown game, but he does not. No takedowns yet in the UFC. Buday, 100% takedown defense. He's undefeated so far in the UFC, winning 5 in a row against Jay Collier, Josh Parisian, and Lucas Brzezinski. Over the course of the last 3, he submitted Parisian. Now, Gaziev, on the other hand, still new. Just beat Greg Velasco by submission at the Contender Series. So he's coming in with a lot of hype, but he is the underdog for a reason, and that's because Buday is better. He can defend the takedowns, right? But he hasn't really been tested yet. This will be a true test. Will Gaziev go for takedowns? He can't, maintain the 1.5 significant strikes per minute, or else Buday will overwhelm him, and that's what I think happens. He's not ready for Martin Buday. Buday wins, in my opinion, in dominating form, hopefully by KO to move to 14-1, in my opinion, heavyweight division, UFC 296. In the featherweight division at UFC 296, you got Andre Fili coming in at 22-10, taking on Lucas Almeida, who comes in at 14-2. Both guys stand 5'11". Fili 33, Almeida 32, close in age, both in their prime. Fili, 3-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Now the difference is Almeida is much more active, 5.3 significant strikes per minute to 3.8 for Fili. So you're looking at potentially 20 to 25 significant strike advantage for Almeida. But Fili can take the fight to the ground. He lands 2 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds. Fili, 69% takedown defense, right at about average. Lost to Nathaniel Wood, by decision. Beat Bill Algio and lost to Joe Anderson Brito, so he's lost 2 of the last 3. Lucas Almeida, 40% takedown defense. And that's the problem, is you're active on the feet, but you can't defend takedowns. That's why he lost to Pat Sabatini by submission. Gave up 2 takedowns. Beat Michael Trezano and lost to Daniel Zellhuber at the Contender Series. So, Fili's a better fighter, and he knows how to win. He's got 32 MMA fights. He knows to take the fight to the ground if he can win that way, and that's what he'll do. It won't be pretty, but he'll win the fight to move to 23-10. Control time is a factor here, in my opinion. Featherweight division, UFC 296. In the flyweight division at UFC 296, you got Tagir Ulanbekov coming in at 14-2, taking on Cody Durden, who comes in at 16-4. Now both guys stand 5'7", both guys 32 years old. Ulanbekov, 3-inch reach advantage, 70-67. Both guys stand left-handed. Both guys just over 3 significant strikes per minute, so pretty even so far. But the takedown game is where it's at. Both guys can land more than a takedown a round, but Cody Durden lands nearly 2 per round. Ulanbekov just over 1 per round. Ulanbekov 61% takedown defense, Durden 80%. That's critical. Ulanbekov beat Nate Maness by submission. Lost to Tim Elliott by decision. Tough fight. Beat Alan Nascimento and Bruno Silva on the way up. So he's won 3 out of 4 in the UFC. Durden, beating everybody in the last 4. Jake Hadley, Charles Johnson, Carlos Mata, and JP Baez, whom he beat by KO. The other 3 were by decision. So you have a very interesting fight, and Ulanbekov is the favorite. But I like Durden's ability to defend takedowns and the ability to go to the ground. He's close enough in significant strikes. I'm going with the underdog here. I think Cody Durden edges out a victory 2 rounds to 1, possible split decision. But Cody Durden sneaks out a victory to move to 17-4, in my opinion. Flyweight division, UFC 296. In the light heavyweight division at UFC 296, you got Alonzo Menefield taking on Dustin Jacoby. This is American versus American. Menefield 14-3, Jacoby 19-7. Now Jacoby stands 3 inches taller at 6'3". He's 35. Menefield 36. These guys don't have much time to play with, right? Both guys 76-inch reach. Both guys stand right-handed. In terms of activity, that's Jacoby. 5.5 significant strikes per minute to 3.8. Takedown game, almost non-existent for both fighters. 1 takedown every 6 rounds on average. Now, Menefield, 75% takedown defense. That'll be fine here. Coming off the win over Jimmy Crute. Lost to Jimmy Crute, or had a draw prior to that. So you might as well wipe that slate clean. It's basically on a 3-fight win streak just about. Or a 4-fight unbeaten streak if you want to look at it that way. He beat Misha Cirkunov and Askar Mazarov to win 3 of the last 4 fights. One of those was a draw. Jacoby, 60% takedown defense. Also good enough in this fight. Beat Kennedy Zachukwu in his last fight by KO. Lost to Azamat Mirzakhanov by decision. And Khalil Roundtree, tough fight by split decision. But Jacoby outstruck Khalil Roundtree Jr. 120-85. That's incredible. This is going to be a highly interesting fight. But Jacoby, despite the 7 losses, is better than Menefield here, in my opinion. He's going to outpace him, right? We know he's more active. He can defend the takedowns, and there's just not an avenue here for Menefield to win, in my opinion. Dustin Jacoby either gets the KO finish or an easy decision victory here. Light heavyweight division, UFC 296. In the women's flyweight division at UFC 296, you got Casey O'Neill taking on Ariane Lipski. I like it. British versus Brazilian. O'Neill and Lipski both stand at 5'6". O'Neill's 26, Lipski's 29, so they're right around their prime. O'Neill 2-inch reach advantage, 69-67, both stand right-handed. Casey O'Neill's very active, 8.8 significant strikes per minute. That's crazy. Lipski 4 per minute. O'Neill lands like 2 takedowns every 3 rounds. Lipski 1 every 6. So O'Neill's got the advantage. But what's the level of competition look like? Lost to Jennifer Maia in the last fight by decision, but beat Roxanne Modaffari. Split decision. Antonina Shevchenko and Lara Procopio both by finish. Not bad. Lipski, on the other hand, 78% takedown defense. That's going to help here. Beat Melissa Gatto and JJ Aldrich in the last 2. Lost to Priscilla Coqueta by KO a few fights back. So that's how it stands. To me, Casey O'Neill doesn't have the same level of competition necessarily, but Casey O'Neill is a better fighter and will prove it in this situation. I mean, 8.8 significant strikes per minute, and you got 5 fights under your belt. That's a heck of an average. So look for her to outpace Lipski to get the win here, in my opinion, and move to 10-1. Women's flyweight division, UFC 296. In the bantamweight division at UFC 296, you got Cody Garbrandt taking on Brian Kelleher. We haven't seen Garbrandt in some time. He's 13-5. Brian Kelleher 24-14. This will be an interesting fight. Now Cody Garbrandt, 2 inches taller at 5'8". He's still just 32 years old, believe it or not. Kelleher 37. Both guys 66-inch reach. Garbrandt stands right-handed. Kelleher's got the advantage. He's a switch stance fighter. And he's more active. 3.4 significant strikes to 3. So very close there. Kelleher lands more takedowns, over a takedown on average every other round. Garbrandt gets one like every 3 rounds. So both guys very capable of going to the ground. Cody, 78% takedown defense. Not bad. Brian Kelleher, 60%. So, that'll limit the takedowns for Brian Kelleher and equalize it there. Now, Garbrandt did come back and get a victory in his last fight against Trevin Jones by decision. 2 takedowns to 1. Very slow-paced fight. But he did lose to Kai Kara France and Rob Font, as he probably should. Well, maybe he shouldn't, but he's slowing down a little bit. He did beat Rafael Sunsao by KO before that, so he's 2-2 in his last 4. Brian Boom Kelleher Lost to Mario Bautista and Umar Nurmagomedov, both by submission. Not a good look. He did beat Kevin Kroom and Domingo Pilate prior to that, but he's not on the level of Cody Garbrandt, right? This is going to be a big fight for Garbrandt to kind of get back in the win column, get the momentum swinging his way, and he'll do so, in my opinion, by defending takedowns and outstriking Kelleher on the feet to move to 14-5. Wouldn't be surprised with a big finish here in the bantamweight division, in my opinion. UFC 296. In the women's bantamweight division at UFC 296, you got Irene Aldana coming in at 14-7, taking on Carol Rosa, who comes in at 17-5. Now, we know Aldana's much taller, 4 inches taller at 5'9". She's 35, Rosa 28. Interesting. Both fighters right around 5 significant strikes per minute, pretty even there. But Rosa can land a takedown on average like every other round. However, Aldana defends a takedown 75% of the time. That'll be important. Lost to Amanda Nunes by decision. But before that, beat Macy Chiasson. That's a big win. Yana Santos, Ketlin Vieira, and Vanessa Mello. She did lose to Holly Holm by decision. Got dominated too. Gave up 5 takedowns in that fight. Rosa defends a takedown 68% of the time. That'll be good enough in this fight. Beat Yana Santos by split decision. Lena Landsberg, Beth Correa, but lost to Sarah McMahon and Norma Dumont. So the difference here is the level of competition. You look at the records and you see Aldana's lost 7, but she's fighting very good competition. And she's just better than Carol Rosa, right? Rosa outpaces her just by a little bit in significant strikes per minute and takedowns, but the experience here tells me that Irene Aldana will win this fight, likely by decision. She knows how to win 2 rounds, in my opinion, to move to 15-7 here. Women's bantamweight division, UFC 296. In the featherweight division of UFC 296, you got Josh Emmett coming in at 18-4, a top contender, taking on Bryce Mitchell, who takes his fight on late notice. He's 16-2. Now, Mitchell, 4 inches taller. He's 29, Emmett 38. That's going to be a factor in this fight as Mitchell enters his prime and Emmett is slowing down. Mitchell fights left-handed. Josh Emmett fights right-handed. Now, Emmett is more active. 4.1 significant strikes per minute to 2.3, but Bryce Mitchell can take the fight to the ground. He lands over a takedown per round. Emmett just won every 3 rounds. And Emmett doesn't have great takedown defense. Neither does Mitchell. 46% for Emmett, 33% for Mitchell. So not very good. This fight's going to land on the ground at some point. Now, Emmett has struggled lately, losing to Ilia Topuria and Yair Rodriguez. He lost the decision to Topuria easily, 152-87, gave up 3 takedowns. Before that, he was on a roll, right? Won 5 in a row against like Calvin Kattar, Dan Ige, Shane Burgos, and others. Bryce Mitchell, a.k.a. Thug Nasty, coming up to win over Dan, 50K Ige by decision. Had 5 takedowns in that one. Lost to Ilia Topuria, but a close fight until he was submitted in the second round. It was 40-36. Topuria in significant strikes. Mitchell did have a takedown. Ended up losing that fight, but he did beat Edson Barboza and Andre Fili. And, this is going to be a close fight, but I like Bryce Mitchell in this, despite the fact he's taking it on short notice, which is always a disadvantage. Because you got to cut weight in a short amount of time, and you weren't prepared for this fight. But nonetheless, Mitchell is better. He's going to take the fight to the ground, control it that way, and get the win here by decision. In my opinion, featherweight division, UFC 296. In the welterweight division at UFC 296, you got an interesting one here. Vicente Luque takes on Ian Gary. Luque, Brazilian, 22-9 coming in. Gary, perfect 13-0. And this is a fight that Gary's got to win. Number one, if he wants to remain undefeated, but really if he wants to keep climbing the ladder. And Vicente Luque is no joke, right? Gary, 4 inches taller at 6'3". He's 26. Vicente is 31. Gary's given up 1 inch in reach. Both guys stand right-handed. Now, in terms of activity, Ian Gary is the man. 6.7 significant strikes per minute, but Luque, 5.2. So not bad either. Vicente can land more takedowns. He gets 1 every 3 rounds. Ian Gary, like 1 every 5. So you can expect a lot of stand-up time unless someone can really take this thing to the ground and control their opponent. Now, Vicente, 62% takedown defense. Ian Gary, 69. So relatively close. Vicente's coming off the win over RDA by decision, as he should. He lost to Jeff Neal and Bilal Muhammad by KO and decision. Before that, he won 4 in a row against Michael Chiesa, Tyron Woodley, Randy Brown, Nico Price. He was on a tremendous run. So he's won 5 of the last 7. but has lost 2 of the last 3. Now, Ian Gary, on the other hand, is a winner, right? He's won all 6 in the UFC, beating Neil Magny by decision. He also beat D-Rod by KO, Song Keenan KO, and Gabe Green by decision. But the big one is Neil Magny in the last fight. That shows that he belongs. But Vicente is on a different level. I mean, this is a very tough fighter, tough opponent, Brazilian. But there's something special about Ian Gary, and I hope this isn't the wall that he runs into, but instead the wall that he crushes. And I expect him to do that here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Vicente wins either. He's very tough. And Vicente is right in his prime. Ian Gary's entering that prime. So it's going to be a tough situation. But Ian Gary's undefeated for a reason, and he's on a roll. I expect him to keep winning here. I'd like to see him get the KO, but it's likely going to be a decision, close one. 29-28 on 2 judges' scorecards. I'm calling for a split decision. That's how close it'll be. But Ian Gary wins in significant strikes. And, he'll defend the takedowns pretty well to get the win here. Welterweight division, UFC 296. In the lightweight division at UFC 296, you got a banger. Tony Ferguson comes in at 26-9, taking on the rising Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, who comes in at 20-3. And believe it or not, he's the favorite. But let's see if that holds up. Tony Ferguson, 1 inch taller at 5'11". Now the big deal here is he's 39, Paddy 28. So Paddy's entering his prime. Tony Ferguson left that behind a while back. Now Tony has a 4-inch reach advantage, 77-73. Both guys stand right-handed. In terms of activity, that's Ferguson over his career. 5 significant strikes per minute. Paddy just over 4, 4.2 to be exact per minute. So you're looking at like 1 significant strike difference, maybe 10 to 15 throughout the fight, so that's not a big deal. Paddy lands more takedowns. He lands like a takedown every 3 rounds. Ferguson like 1 every 6 rounds. So Tony's trying to stand up and strike. Ferguson has a 66% takedown defense, but he's on a tremendous slide, losing to Bobby Green, Nate Diaz, Michael Chandler, Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje. I mean, that's crazy. I didn't realize it was that many losses in a row. So he's just fallen off a cliff. But he's still the rites of passage, if you will. You got to get through Tony Ferguson in order to start climbing the ladder even further. Now Paddy, 56% takedown defense, not good, but he wins. He's coming off wins against Jared Gordon by decision, Jordan Levitt submission. He also submitted Kazula Vargas, and he KO'd Luigi Vendramini, which was a tremendous KO at the time. So, Paddy's doing his thing. 4 straight wins. But can he beat Tony Ferguson, a guy that's been around the game forever? So it's going to be age versus youth, and it's going to be experience versus lack thereof. Tony Ferguson has way more experience than Paddy the Baddy, and that could play out in this fight. But still, and it's a very awkward fight. When they announce this, it's kind of like, this isn't the normal type of fight you'll see. A guy like Paddy coming up. I mean, Paddy's 20-3. He'd be taking on Tony Ferguson, who's on a slide, but it's still a big name to notch under your belt. And I'm a little conflicted here, but I'm leaning with Paddy the Baddy Pimblett just because he's young, he's got the energy, and that should overtake the experience in this situation, unless Ferguson can finish him in the first or early second round. We'll see. And the lightweight division, as you know, always brings chaos. Anything can happen in this division. It's never an easy prediction, and I mean never. But Paddy the Baddy Pimblett wins, in my opinion, mainly on a few takedowns. I'm saying he's going to get 2 or 3 in this fight. Look for submission attempts, but Tony Ferguson's good at protecting himself. And Paddy will also lead in significant strikes with that ground control time as well. He'll be able to land more strikes, but Tony's better on the feet. So Paddy's got to get it to the ground at some point in order to win. But in my belief, he does that, and he does win here. Lightweight division, UFC 296. In the welterweight division at UFC 296, you got a great one here between Shavkat Rakhmonov and Stephen Thompson. This is 5 versus 6 in this division. Now, Rakhmonov stands at 6'1" compared to the 6 feet, 6 foot tall Stephen Thompson, so he's got a 1-inch height advantage. He's just 28 years old. Stephen Thompson, 40. It's getting on the downside. Rakhmonov, 2-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. In terms of activity, pretty close. Rakhmonov, 4.5 significant strikes per minute to 4.2 for Stephen Thompson. When you get into the takedown game, Rakhmonov has the advantage. He lands like 1 every other round. Stephen Thompson's trying to, uses takedown defense to keep the fight standing. Now, beginning with Shavkat Rakhmonov, 100% takedown defense. So he's probably not getting taken down in this fight. He hasn't lost yet in the UFC. He's 5-0, beating Jeff Neal by submission. He also beat Neil Magny by submission and Carlson Harris by KO. These are over the last 3 fights, so he's looking pretty solid. Now, Stephen Thompson, a.k.a. Wonder Boy, 64% takedown defense. That's not going to be good enough in this fight. Make no mistake about it. He did beat Kevin Holland in his last fight by 4th round KO. Before that, he lost to Bilal Muhammad by decision and Gilbert Burns by decision. Still a really good fighter. He also beat Jeff Neal by decision. Still a really good fighter, and you can see why this fight is perfect for Shavkat. Is he on the level up there with Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns? I certainly think so. But those are the only guys that Stephen Thompson is losing to. He's beating who he's supposed to beat. He's beating the Kevin Holland. He's beating the Jeff Neals. He's beating Vicente Luque 2019. Right? He's beaten some top-tier opponents. He just loses to the top competitors in the division, potentially. And Gilbert Burns isn't big in that division, but he can step up and fight if need be. What I'm trying to tell you is this is a good test for Shavkat Rakhmonov, but it's just that. It's just a test. It's one that he's got to pass. He's got to pass this test. He's going to do so. He's going to defend the takedowns. If there's any attempt by Stephen Thompson, which I think there will be because Shavkat will be lighting him up pretty good. Shavkat will land takedowns at will if he decides to go for them, and that will be interesting. Will he play this the safe game and try to land some takedowns and get some submission attempts and ground and pound and all that, or will he just stand up and strike with Stephen Thompson, which may not be the best idea in the world. But regardless of how he takes his fight, I think he's going to win it, and win it not with ease, but with not many problems. He'll win this fight pretty easily. Just not with ease, but he will win this fight easily. Like I'm talking 30-27, unanimous decision. Maybe he gets a 2nd or 3rd round submission or TKO victory, something like that. But look for Shavkat to come in and pour it on, both in significant strikes, takedowns, and control time, and dominate all facets of this fight because he's in his 20s and Stephen Thompson is 40. He's on the downside, but still a pretty good fighter. So look out for that. In my opinion, Shavkat Rakhmonov wins this fight here to move to 18-0. Ridiculous. Moving up on our due list for sure. Welterweight division, UFC 296. In the flyweight division at UFC 296, your co-main event for the flyweight division title. You got Alexander Pantoja, champion, coming in at 26-5. He's Brazilian, taking on the American Brandon Royval, who comes in at 15-6. So this is just another fight to get the American crowd hyped up, leading to the title fight between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. Now, Pantoja, though, is a big favorite. So the American crowd's going to have to be wild and crazy early to help Royval pull this thing off. Royval's 4 inches taller, though, at 5'9". He's 31, Pantoja 33. They're both in their prime, as you'd expect. It's a title fight. Both guys 68-inch reach. Royval fights left-handed. Alexander Pantoja stands right-handed. Pantoja more active. One more significant strike per minute, 4.4 versus 3.4 between these two fighters. Also, Pantoja lands more takedowns. Like over a takedown on average every 2 rounds. So he's getting at least 1 every other round. Royval gets like 1 every 5 rounds. So, Royval is trying to keep this thing standing. And it's crazy that he's gotten himself into a title fight here because you don't see great numbers for Royval in terms of activity and takedowns. But he continues to find ways to win. Now, Pantoja, 66% takedown defense. Not great. About average, but should be fine in this one. Looked great against Brandon Moreno. 129 significant strikes, 6 takedowns to 2. Got the split decision win. And I think you'll see that fight again eventually. He also beat Alex Perez by submission. He's beaten Brandon Royval back in 2021 by submission. So that's why he's the favorite here. Royval, 39% takedown defense. that's going to be a problem. And it was in the first fight when he gave up 3 takedowns, only landed 1. Since then, no, he's been on a run, beating Rogerio Bontorin, Matt Schnell, and then Matthias Nicolau. But are these big enough wins to say, hey, he's that much better than he was 2 years ago? I mean, he was, 29? So he's like right in the middle of his prime now, so maybe he's gotten a little better, but I don't think it's going to be enough to beat Alexander Pantoja. Although I'd like to see it happen to get the American crowd fired up for Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards, but I don't see it happening. Alexander Pantoja is a better fighter. He's more than a 2-1 favorite for a reason. He's more active. He lands more takedowns. He's more seasoned. Alexander Pantoja should win this fight and retain the flyweight title, in my opinion, likely by decision at UFC 296. In the welterweight division, for the welterweight division title, this is the fight we've been waiting on. Leon Edwards comes in at 21-3. He takes on Colby Covington, who comes in at 17-3. So we finally know that this title fight is going down. And I'm here to tell you this is Colby's best chance to take the title. Even in the fights against Usman, he's got a better chance in this one. But does that mean he's going to win? Let's get into it. Colby, the contender, is 3 inches shorter at 5'11". He's 35 years old. Leon Edwards, 32. Covington's given up 2 inches in reach. Edwards fights southpaw. Covington fights right-handed. Colby lands 4.1 significant strikes per minute to 2.8 for Edwards. And here's where things get interesting. Colby also leads in the takedown game. He has 4 over the course of 3 rounds on average, so that's more than 1 per round. Leon Edwards is lucky to get 1 every other round. So how does Leon win? He changes your pace when he fights against you. You can't maintain the same pace. He brings your numbers way down. Long story short. Okay, and he did this against Usman, holding him to just 87 significant strikes in the last fight, majority decision win. And the one before that, he was getting beat in the numbers. 5 takedowns to 1, 83-55 in significant strikes. He was trailing. And if you combine both fights, they're basically even in significant strikes, and he trailed 9-1 in takedowns and still found a way to win both. And that's a tough part of Leon Edwards, is he finds ways to win. He beat Nate Diaz by decision. No contest against Bilal. And before that, he ran off a bunch of wins. I mean, this guy hasn't lost since 2015. So think about trying to predict against him. Colby Covington, 72% takedown defense. Coming off a win against Jorge Masvidal. Lost to Usman, beat Woodley, lost to Usman. So despite this guy getting older, he is well rested. By no means is a tired fighter. He's only fought, he's only fought 3 times in the last 3 years. Literally. He fought Woodley September 19, 2020. By the time he gets in the octagon, it'll be 3 years and about 3 or 4 months later. And he's only had 3 fights. Really 2 if you don't count the Woodley, right? So he's 2-2 in his last 4, losing both to Usman, beating Masvidal, and Tyron Woodley. And with what Leon Edwards has done, how do you go against Leon Edwards? Well, it's real simple. Colby is going to dominate in activity. Leon Edwards can't help to slow the fight down by landing takedowns, because Colby's really good at that. He's gonna stifle Leon Edwards even better than Usman did. Usman had the 9 takedowns, but Colby's gonna ride him. He's gonna get him up against the fence. He's gonna clinch him up. He's gonna grind this thing out. Colby in this fight is gonna be like a football team that gets an early 14-0 lead and just begins to run the ball and chew up the clock. And next thing you know, there's 2 minutes left in the 4th quarter, and you can't get the ball from them, and you're like, what happened to this game? Well, they just drained it, played ball control. That's what Colby's going to do in this fight. He's going to drain the clock. He's going to get an early lead in the first 2 rounds. Then by the 3rd, he's going to start to clinch, and he's going to ride this thing out, and he's going to win 3 out of 5 rounds. To me, it's real simple for Colby. I think Colby wins this fight in that regard. The numbers aren't really going to matter. It's just he's going to control the heck out of this fight, whether it's takedowns or in the clinch, to get the belt. He'll move to 18-3, in my opinion. Leon Edwards' reign will be over, and Colby Covington will be the new welterweight champion here at UFC 296.